Ladies and gentlemen, this is an article from the Washington Times. Federal Bureau of Investigation Director Christopher Wray preparing to resign. Christopher Wray was appointed or was chosen by President Trump, and you will hear congressional testimony from Director Wray and Jim Jordan, Ted Cruz, and other Republicans wondering why, for example, the Bureau went after Donald Trump when they didn't treat Biden and others in the same manner. The problem was the double standard. Furthermore, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Central Intelligence, National Security Agency, none of these agencies or departments, none of the intelligence community is meant to investigate incoming presidents or investigate classified data breaches, alleged classified data issues stemming from a National Archives complaint. Okay? The Presidential Records Act doesn't have an enforcement mechanism. There was no reason for the Presidential Archives or the National Archives to even speak to the Federal Bureau of Investigation at all, especially when Mar-a-Lago, for example, was raided, but other dwellings of former and current presidents were not. So there's a double standard. There was a double standard with the Steele dossier. There's a double standard with the Mar-a-Lago issue. The Federal Bureau of Investigation seemingly took a side, seemingly took the Democratic Party's side. Now, Christopher Wray was very, very popular and respected by Democrats in media. He did not, unfortunately, treat Biden, Hunter, the Clintons in the manner that he treated Donald Trump. Okay, he was perhaps more diplomatic than James Comey, but it seems there was the aura, or there was the belief, there is the belief among many Americans that the Federal Bureau of Investigation under his leadership was leveled against Donald Trump and everyone around Donald Trump. Okay, that's the belief among a great many Republicans, a great many people around the country. And we will discuss that, and you will see how that's very likely true during congressional testimony. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Let's get started. This is a Washington Times article. Federal Bureau of Investigation Director Christopher Wray preparing to resign. I don't know why Director Wray didn't ask how classified data was siphoned from secure government locations onto Clinton's private servers, for example. I don't know why Director Wray did not investigate the alleged and possible bribery and graft located within Hunter's laptop. I don't know why Director Wray and others didn't investigate the 50 intelligence officials that said Hunter's laptop was a Kremlin operative or a Kremlin operation to deceive people into choosing Trump over Democrats. I don't know why, for example, Mar-a-Lago was raided when no other dwelling of a current and former president was, and Bush, President Obama, Clinton, and others had more classified data swirling around after their presidencies than Trump ever did. And maybe the reason they weren't investigated was they were part of a very corrupt political establishment. Also, a president has the power to declassify. Navy versus Egan is a Supreme Court precedent that allows the president to declassify anything, virtually anything. So the National Archives had no way of knowing whether Trump declassified the documents they claimed that they wanted. So the United States government was leveled at Donald Trump with the help of people like Director Wray, according to Trump and Trump Republicans. And if you look, ladies and gentlemen, Director Wray did not treat, if you just look at the congressional testimony, he did not treat Democrats in the manner that he treated Republicans. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Let's get started. This is Director Wray talking about the investigation into the absurd, nonsensical Russia probe that proved to be absolutely categorically nothing. that proved to be a setup of Trump, but this is Jim Jordan really taking him to task on the inconsistencies and the overt bias. So you have agents within the Federal Bureau of Investigation who are no longer there that wanted to stop Trump, literally wanted to stop Trump in their messages and set up and frame Trump, while they allowed Clinton to have private servers that were unencrypted at one point to transfer top secret intel onto secret servers. That is the greatest national security breach, cybersecurity breach of all time. And yet the Honorable James Comey and the Honorable Director Wray did nothing to find out how these servers were connected to U.S. government servers, which is literally impossible from a cybersecurity perspective.
Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Director, was Agent Peter Strzok the former deputy head of counterintelligence at the FBI?
I don't remember his exact title, but I believe that's correct.
And he's the same Peter Strzok who was a key player in the Clinton investigation, the same Peter Strzok who interviewed Cheryl Mills, Huma Abedin, participated in the Clinton, Secretary Clinton's interview. And he's also the same Peter Strzok who now we know changed Director Comey's exoneration letter, changed the term gross negligence, which is a crime, to extreme carelessness. Is that the same guy?
Well, Congressman, I don't know every step that the individual you mentioned was involved in, but certainly I know that he was heavily involved in
So Peter Strzok allegedly, along with other things, allegedly altered the document, altered Comey's speech, his press conference pertaining to the Clinton email fiasco, to what was it? Carelessness as opposed to gross negligence, which was part of the statute, 18 U.S. Code 793F. I believe that was the Espionage Act statute, where even if there was no intent, the fact that Clinton owned servers with top secret intel was a crime. Now, you have Harvard and Yale scholars, legal and constitutional scholars. You have national security experts on X, formerly Twitter, and throughout the country. There is no, if a person who claims to be a legal scholar or a national security expert says that Clinton's email servers weren't a monumental danger to cyber and national security, they don't know what they're talking about, or they're being willfully ignorant. And the issue is that Trump never had secret private servers siphoning classified and top secret intelligence onto them. Clinton had that. Could you imagine if Trump had secret servers? Could you imagine if Donald Trump had a laptop full of bribery and graft? Could you imagine if Trump had a Corvette in a garage with mounds of classified data? I mean, could you imagine if 50 intelligence officials went to Trump's defense saying that Donald Trump Jr.'s laptop was a disinformation campaign? Could you imagine if the Clintons or the Bidens or President Obama had their residence descended upon by the Federal Bureau of Investigation because the National Archives demanded that? It would never in a million years happen. That's the problem, ladies and gentlemen.
the Clinton email investigation.
Thank you. And is this the same Peter Strzok who helped, was a key player in the Russian investigation, and the same Peter Strzok who was put on Mueller's team, special counsel Bob Mueller's team?
I certainly know that he was working on the special counsel's investigation. Whether or not he would be characterized as a key player on that investigation, that's really not for me to say.
And the same Peter Strzok that we learned this past weekend was removed from the special counsel team because he exchanged text messages with a colleague at the FBI that displayed a pro-Clinton bias. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Talk about the same guy. Okay.
Yes.
Well, here's what I'm not getting. Peter Strzok is selected to be on Mueller's team after all this history, put on Mueller's team, and then he's removed for some pro-Clinton text messages. I mean, there are all kinds of people on Mueller's team who are pro-Clinton. There's been all kinds of stories. PolitiFact reported 96% of the top lawyers' contributions went to Clinton or Obama. But Peter Strzok, the guy who ran the Clinton investigation, interviewed Mills, Abedin, interviewed Secretary Clinton, changed gross negligence a crime to the term extreme carelessness, who ran the Russian investigation, who interviewed Mike Flynn, gets put on Mueller's team, and then he gets kicked off for a text message that's anti-Trump. If you kicked everybody off Mueller's team who was anti-Trump, I don't think there'd be anybody left. So there's got to be something more here. It can't just be some text messages that show a pro-Clinton, anti-Trump bias. There's got to be something more. And I'm trying to figure out what it is. But my hunch is it has something to do with the dossier. Director, did Peter Strzok help produce and present the application to the FISA court to secure a warrant to spy on Americans associated with the Trump campaign?
Congressman, I'm not prepared to discuss anything about a FISA process in this setting.
We're not.
And now we get Kash Patel and John Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard, who are more than prepared to declassify everything, more than prepared to answer that type of question. They're not. Kash Patel, at the new director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, John Ratcliffe, the new Central Intelligence Chief, Tulsi Gabbard, the new Office of Director of National Intelligence Chief, they're not going to deceptively get warrants to investigate people who are innocent. They're simply going to investigate why the previous investigators utilized such underhanded means. Why did Carter Page and George Papadopoulos and Trump and others, why was there such an apoplectic frenzy to fabricate quote-unquote evidence in the form of a Steele dossier, for example, that led to FEC fines? The Steele dossier was such a false and fabricated document that the Clinton and DNC campaigns paid FEC fines. The Federal Election Commission fined Clinton and the DNC for the Steele dossier. Furthermore, why do these agencies take laptops or take data or take information? For example, the attempt on Trump's life. Does anyone know anything about the first attempt? I mean, there's a whole bunch of scandals where information is taken and sealed and classified. We're still waiting for declassified information from JFK's, from what happened to JFK. Okay? We're still waiting for the government to declassify information. So the classification process is used to hide information. Some of it's very important. I agree. I agree with James Comey and Christopher Wray and others that you have to keep some things classified. So does Kash Patel. You must keep national security secrets classified. You must at all times keep traditional, genuine national security classified. Okay, journalists, the average American, should not be able to see true and genuine national security information. Okay, that needs to be kept secret just for national security purposes. But all the rest of the information that the average American has a right and is entitled to see, that isn't necessarily national security, that is simply corrupt officials covering their tracks, that needs to be seen by everyone. And Kash Patel is going to find out what Democrats and media and corrupt government officials did not want people to find out, which was motive. What was the motive? What was the exculpatory evidence that was withheld? And where are the examples of people conspiring? So you already have examples of government officials working, conspiring to take down Trump in their own messages.
We're not talking about what happened in the court. We're talking about what the FBI took to the court, the application. Did Peter Strzok, was he involved in taking that to the court?
I'm not going to discuss in this setting anything to do with the FISA court applications.
Well, let's remember a couple things, Director. And I know you know this. We've all been made aware of this in the
BG, I love you. Thank you for your support. But I just because of the algorithm and the constraints in terms of messages, I got to remove that. But I appreciate your support, BG. Thank you. Thank you. I apologize. I had to remove the message, but BG, thank you.
Last few weeks, let's remember a couple things about the dossier. The Democrat National Committee and the Clinton campaign, which we now know were one and the same, paid the law firm, who paid Fusion GPS, who paid Christopher Steele, who then paid Russians to put together a report that we call a dossier full of all kinds of fake news, National Enquirer garbage. And it's been reported that this dossier was all dressed up by the FBI, taken to the FISA court, and presented as a legitimate intelligence document, that it became the basis for granting a warrant to spy on Americans. And I'm wondering, I'm wondering if that actually took place. It sure looks like it did. And the easiest way to clear it up is for you guys to tell us what was in that application and who took it there.
Congressman, our staffs have been having extensive interaction with both intelligence committees on our interaction with the FISA court, and I think that's the appropriate setting for those questions.
Here's what I think, Director Wray. I think Peter Strzok, head of counterintelligence at the FBI, Peter Strzok, the guy who ran the Clinton investigation, did all the interviews, Peter Strzok, the guy who was running the Russian investigation at the FBI, Peter Strzok, Mr. Super Agent at the FBI, I think he's the guy who took the application to the FISA court. And if that happened, I mean, think if this happened, if you had the FBI working with a campaign, the Democrats' campaign, taking opposition research, dressing it all up and turning it into an intelligence document and taking it to the FISA court so they could spy on the other campaign, if that happened, that is as wrong as it gets. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. You could clear it all up. You could clear it all up for all of us here, all the Congress who wants to know, and frankly, all of America who wants to know. You could clear it all up by release. We sent you a letter 2 days ago. Just release the application. Tell us what was in it. Tell us if I'm wrong. But I don't think I am.
So everything that's incriminating is redacted. That's how it works. That's why Kash Patel. See, the biggest thing, it's not just the prosecution and indictments. The indictments, the special counsels that will take place, the indictments that will take place, the prosecution and the convictions of people who deliberately broke the law to set up and frame Trump. Okay, they broke the law if they, for example, lied during these applications. They broke the law when they investigated Trump for political purposes. You can easily prove that with text messages and emails and communication that still there's a record of all of that. They might be trying to shred things right now. It doesn't matter. There's a record of all of that. So there's 18 U.S. Code 371. They tried to use that statute against Trump. That's the statute that says if you utilize your government position for personal gain or for any corrupt motive or corrupt objective, you've broken the law. These people decided, not Christopher Wray necessarily. I'm talking about former bureau officials, former DOJ officials, former Central Intelligence officials, former government officials, maybe even judges. They decided, maybe the judges can fall back on, well, we were duped, but these government officials, former government officials, maybe even current, decided to level the United States government against Donald Trump. And they pretended that this was national security. It was never, the allegations against Trump were never national security issues because we have a $30+ billion budget for just 3 of those intel agencies. It's $30+ billion estimated for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Central Intelligence, and the National Security Agency. That's an estimate. Nobody knows. I don't believe anyone knows what the true budget is. Doge will probably find out, but nobody knows. You would have had video evidence. You would have had surveillance footage of Trump. You would have had emails. You would have had money transfers. You would have had, more than just a stupid meeting where, a staffer, George Papadopoulos, was set up and framed. They went after Trump because of a meeting, because of a New York Times article, with an Australian ambassador who likely lied through his teeth, and another person that literally nobody can find. And then we find out that they withheld exculpatory evidence. Then we find out that everything they accused Papadopoulos of doing, he didn't do. And they just got him on forgetting the date of an email. Something along those lines. And the dossier that was literally purchased by Hillary Clinton, this is what the United States government resorted to for a 1.5-year investigation where there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of articles written to paint Trump as this incoming operative of another country. That's not national security. That's gossip and hearsay promoted by Trump's political rivals to deceive the entire American public. And people still believe it. You have academics believing this nonsense, and they're teaching a new generation of Americans. Everybody, we all knew it was complete nonsense, but that's against the law. You can't simply just accuse somebody without evidence and investigate them forever so they go bankrupt. That's against the law. Against 18 U.S. Code 371. That's just one statute. And then there's 18 U.S. Code 115, I think. There's all these statutes. But let's continue.
I think that's exactly what happened. And if it did, it is as wrong as it can be. And people who did that need to be held accountable.
Congressman, we will not hesitate to hold people accountable after there has been an appropriate investigation, independent and objective, by the Inspector General into the handling of the prior matter. And based on that, I will look at all available remedies, depending on what the facts are when they are found. As to the access to the dossier, that's something that is a subject of ongoing discussion between my staff and the various intelligence committees.
There's nothing prohibiting you, Director. Is there anything prohibiting you from showing this committee what was presented to the FISA court? The application you all put together at the FBI that was presented to the FISA court. Is there anything preventing you from showing us that?
The time of the gentleman has expired. The director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Director, we appreciate your being.
Get ready to get Gomerized.
In here. I was so thrilled when first got to question Director Comey. I didn't realize what direction that would take, but you are taking an FBI department that was weakened.
Louis Gohmert is the best. I wish he was still in Congress. Nobody's better. When you get Gomerized, it's like a thing of beauty.
By Mueller's time, and I'm not asking for a comment on that, but I know from his 5-year up or out policy, as the Wall Street Journal pointed out, he got rid of thousands and thousands of years of experience. I came to believe because he wanted younger people that were more yes men, and so he got rid of people that could have advised him against some of the poor decisions he made, whether it's squandering millions of dollars on software that didn't work and wouldn't work, and people he got rid of knew that, but all kinds of things. And I came to understand as a young prosecutor who knew the law better than some of the older lawyers that there is something to be gained from experience. And so we lost thousands of years of experience, and Comey took over a weakened FBI because of what Mueller did, and Mueller made a lot of mistakes he wouldn't have otherwise. So that was rather sad. But I want to, I'll be glad to have my friend across the aisle know that I am outraged by the government's collusion with Russia. I was outraged. I didn't think President Bush and our State Department went far enough in condemning the invasion into Georgia by Putin and the Russians, but they did take some strong actions to make known their discomfort and their upset over that. And of course, the response by the Obama administration was to send over a plastic reset button with the wrong Russian word on it. But they made clear nonetheless that we're not bothered by your invasion of Georgia. You can invade anybody you want. That was the message the Russians took. And I am really outraged at the...
Okay, so Congressman Gohmert is referring to the Russian reset that President Obama and Hillary Clinton engaged in. So Democrats go from Cold Warriors to peace advocates, back to the JFK, tough on the Soviets, Democrats, and so they go back and forth. So when President Obama first became president, he wanted to distance himself from Bush's foreign policy, which stunk. And of course, there was an invasion. There was an invasion by the Kremlin into a neighboring country under Bush, and there was the same type of invasion under President Obama, and there was the same type of thing under Biden. But guess what? Under Trump, there wasn't. Gee, I wonder how that worked. I wonder why that happened. Why did our former Cold War adversaries, or maybe current Cold War adversaries, invade with other presidents, but not with Trump? Gee, I wonder why. Anyway, then President Obama took office, and he took office even the second time also. He told Mitt Romney the 80s want their foreign policy back. Okay, when Democrats feel like it, they pretend to care about peace. When Trump took over, they said, oh, how come Trump he's a lackey of our adversaries? Nobody bought it. If you know anything about foreign policy, there's something called mutually assured destruction. There's only so much you could do. Well, up until recently, there was only so much you could do because you didn't want to create a nuclear crisis. Not the average Democrat who thinks that Trump is a menace, they're very intelligent, and I'm sure they possess a great deal of wisdom in other areas, but in terms of actual U.S. history, it's been a long time where maybe they've never opened up a book and learned about the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, how we were always so close to a devastating nuclear confrontation that would have unfortunately ended the planet in minutes. And guess what? We still have the armament. So do they. They have the same weaponry and more. So do we. And so the environment and the planet could be gone forever if you have two nuclear-powered or nuclear-armed countries going at it. So you want to have Trump's foreign policy. It's a moral imperative if you like future generations. Democrats are always talking about posterity and future generations. Well, Gomer is referring to the fact that they didn't care when Obama first came in. It was a Russian reset. And that apparently, according to Congressman Gomer, gave them the wrong idea.
Allowing of Russia to buy our uranium, even though the FBI and the Justice Department had already found out that they were trying to get our uranium illegally with bribes and violating the law, and that has not been addressed. So, yes, I am outraged. But as you're aware, Deputy Director McCabe was involved in highly charged political cases that have been controversial due to his political leanings. So I want to ask you if you are aware of any other senior FBI executives that are aligned with McCabe.
By the way, the best thing ever, it's a CNN clip. I'll find it one of these days. I've shown it before. Director Comey, the Honorable Director Comey, was willing to testify against his good friend and number two, eventually number one for a second, Andrew McCabe. He was willing to testify. I think it was what's his name? One of the hosts. And then Comey said, I would be willing to testify, against him. Potentially. So that's the type of situation that you're in. They would all testify against each other in 2 seconds.
McCabe's political views. Yes or no? You aware of any other senior FBI executives?
I'm not aware of any senior FBI executives who are allowing improper political considerations to affect their work with me right now.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm going to ask about specific.
And when the Inspector General hears this, he's like, okay, no institutional bias from a testimonial or documentary standpoint. And then media says, no bias, it's no bias. Trump and his lies. Trump and his lies. And then but when they just ask anyone biased, and he's like, no, I'm not aware of anybody. And then the media's like, no bias, Trump. And then when Trump is accused of going to the bathroom or somebody going to the bathroom on him from a dossier. They're like, well, did that happen? And Trump's like, no, it didn't. Well, we don't know. Oh, we don't know. With the Steele dossier, they held out hope. Oh, it could be true. But whenever they want something to just be debunked, well, we've asked the county official. Everything was above board. Yeah, Biden, who couldn't speak and articulate anything. He was of course he's the most popular candidate of all time. Oh, that's right. 4 years later, Democrats with one debate remove him. And how dare you even question how he defeated Trump?
Executives, some of whom have been promoted by McCabe within the last few years. So my question to you, Director, is, are you aware of any of the following people openly aligning themselves with the political bias expressed by McCabe or openly speaking against this administration? First, Carl Gattis. Yes or no?
My experience with Executive Assistant Director Gaddis has been very positive, and he's been a complete professional in all my interaction with him.
But are you aware of him openly aligning himself with the political bias that McCabe expressed?
Well, I'm going to quarrel a little bit with the premise of your question about Deputy Director McCabe.
All right.
As far as Executive Assistant Director Gaddis, as I said, he's been a complete professional, and by that I mean to include
Have you heard him
apolitical in his
open
interaction with
aligning
me.
himself with political bias against the Trump administration?
No.
Mike McGarity.
No.
Same question, and I'll take McCabe out of it. Are you aware of him openly aligning himself with political bias against the Trump administration?
No.
Josh Skule.
No.
Larissa Mincer.
I actually don't know who that is.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Fair enough. Brian Parman.
No.
All right. Thank you. And I know you appointed Brian Parman to the New York Field Office Counterterrorism Division, so it is important that we have fair-minded people. And there's never been a requirement that anybody not be able to vote or have political beliefs, just that they not let them affect their output.
The issue is not whether you're a Democrat or Republican. The issue is text messages, emails, communications stating how much you despise an incoming president. That's the problem. I mean, it's not difficult. Like, everything you hear on this channel, that we're almost at 300,000 subs. Hopefully I've been articulate, somewhat eloquent, passionate. Hopefully, people who have watched for years, have learned something, and I'm learning alongside with you. But guess what? You could take everything I've ever said, multiply it times 1,000, and you won't even get half of what Kash Patel knows. And he's like way more passionate than me. They're all passionate, intelligent people who know exactly that Trump was set up and framed. And it's like laws were broken, setting up and framing Trump, and we have and Kash Patel, John Radcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, all of these people will declassify information and find the information that was hidden. They can go ahead. This is beyond the digital age. You can shred as many papers as possible. There's always going to be some kind of digital trail. Except if you have private servers, but even almost certainly that there's a digital trail there, obviously.
So I would encourage you, well, I got a lot more to ask, but thank you for your work. I want to be your best friend as long as you stay on the straight and narrow. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, sir.
The chair recognizes.
A political party to discredit the President of the United States before and after his
is frustrated and disappointed, and they don't like it. And our safe space is to follow the rules, follow the guidelines, follow the Constitution, follow the facts objectively and independently, and then let the critics go where they may, because there will always be lots of critics of everything we do.
Thank you. And
Time of the gentleman has expired. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said that your safe space is to follow the rules. Were the rules followed in the Hillary Clinton investigation?
That's something that's being investigated right now by the outside inspector general. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he finds on that.
Yeah, you and me both. Did she get special treatment?
Well, again, I think when you ask about special treatment, I interpret that, and I may not be correctly interpreting your question, in which case I'm sure you'll tell me. But I take that to be a question about whether or not the handling of that investigation was tainted in some way by improper political considerations, and that's exactly what the Inspector General is going to tell us.
So I sent you a letter asking you to tell us whether or not Hillary Clinton got special treatment. And your office's answer was that you would provide it in a classified setting. Why don't the American people deserve to know whether or not Hillary Clinton got special treatment?
Well, I think the reference to classified information went to the other part of your letter, which has to do with the...
If Donald Trump had
The dossier.
If Donald Trump purchased a dossier with Rudy Giuliani that said President Obama was in a Moscow hotel room experiencing some kind of, or Biden experiencing some kind of specific activity, Democrats and media would be in outrage mode 24/7. The indignation would be seen and heard throughout the universe. But they can do that with Trump, and of course, let's look into it, and it's a big issue that he might have been in that hotel room. So again, of course there was. If Trump had servers, it's impossible for secret private servers to exist anywhere in the U.S. government. In fact, there are emails that showed that President Obama knew she had secret servers. And you can't transfer top secret intelligence onto secret servers. But see, here's the thing. The bureaucracy and the classification process allows top officials to just not answer the question. So he's an incoming. This was years back during his nomination process, or during his confirmation process. And the Inspector General report, the Inspector General never stated categorically anything. They said, well, there's bias, but from an institutional or there's no testimony or documentary bias that the entire agency was leveled or was protecting Clinton or leveled against Trump. Well, of course, that's meaningless. You wouldn't need the entire agency to be leveled or to protect anyone. If you have agents involved that are protecting Clinton and agents involved that are going after Trump, that's all you need to show that there's bias against Trump and that there's the U.S. government protecting Clinton.
Issues.
Let's talk about that.
On the first part, on this question of special treatment, what I would tell you, because I think this was one of the questions in your letter, is that we do not have at the FBI some double standard of special, not special. There's no formal term special. Special, as best I can tell.
So it's an informal term.
It's an informal term.
Yeah, you could see how that informally designating something as special signifies a double standard, right?
I can see how the term special could be misunderstood. I will tell you that.
Well, let me go to the dossier because I have limited time, Mr. Director. So on the dossier, did the FBI pay for a dossier on the president?
Questions about the dossier are something that are better taken up in separate settings.
Well, don't the American...
The FBI paid, I think, $1 million, I believe, to verify the dossier, which was, of course, completely false. It was completely fabricated. They wasted $1 million, allegedly, of taxpayer money to see if any of the absurd allegations within a Clinton-funded dossier, like Trump's direct political rivals purchased a compilation of lies and completely false statements, patently, categorically false statements. And then a government agency said, you know what, there might be some truth to this. And they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to see if anything that was fabricated is actually true. Of course, nothing was true. They wasted the money. But this is during the nomination process. I found it very interesting that we know so much more now. And Ray and others are very good at not really answering the questions, talking about bureaucracy, talking about ongoing investigation, and, this is classified. We can't talk about it in this setting. But that's why, Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard, and especially John Ratcliffe, they're going to declassify everything. or everything that is important to proving that Trump was set up and framed.
People deserve to know whether taxpayer money was used to buy a dossier that was curated by a political party to discredit the President of the United States before and after his election.
As I said, I understand the basis for the question, but I would tell you that questions on that subject are something that we're having lots and lots of interaction with multiple congressional committees and their staffs on in a classified setting.
Did Bob Mueller recruit people to his probe that had a bias against the president?
I can't speak to how Director Mueller staffed or recruited for his team.
It seems like a hell of a coincidence. I mean, we got Mr. Strzok, who's clearly got a bias. That's why he was reassigned. He's at the center of a lot of the development of facts. You got Mr. Weissman, who's praising people who are defying the president. And then you have law firms that are overwhelmingly donating to the Obama campaign and the Clinton campaign that serve up the humans that are in that investigation. So you can't say with certainty that bias against the president wasn't a factor that brought people into the Mueller probe, can you?
As I said, I'm not going to weigh in on Director Mueller's staffing of his own team.
So we don't know whether Mr. Mueller recruited people as a consequence of their bias. We don't know whether Hillary Clinton was treated as special. We don't know whether the FBI used taxpayer money to go and buy a dossier to discredit the president. Now, what we do know is that you said you're an ask questions first, then act kind of guy, which I believe and appreciate. So you would never, as an ask questions first kind of guy, draft an exoneration statement before interviewing key witnesses in an investigation, would you?
Well, I certainly wouldn't finalize one. I will say, as I said, I can't remember if it was to Congressman Gowdy or one of your other colleagues, in my experience in an investigation, you do start to form a view, but keywords being start.
Do you start drafting an exoneration statement before conducting witness interviews?
We sometimes would draft reports before the investigation was
Exonerating someone?
Exonerating or incriminating. But in all cases, as Congressman Gowdy alluded to in his own comments, in my view, you would not make any kind of final decision about anything, exoneration or otherwise, until you'd had all the evidence.
So we've got an exoneration statement draft.
So Gates is referring to Comey's exoneration of Clinton before, relevant witnesses, were interviewed. But see, they didn't find out how classified data was transferred onto servers. That's the issue with Comey and McCabe and Strzok and all of these people. It's a very simple question. Why didn't the Honorable Director Comey explain how on earth you could transfer classified or special access program intelligence onto secret servers? It's not even possible to do so, but Clinton was able to do it, and that's the heart of the matter. Okay, the possible bribery and graft with Hunter's laptop is the heart of the matter. But see, again, it's like there's this blind spot in American politics. There's all this smoke and mirrors and bluster and, misdirection. And like the average American is not focused on what is really important. What is really important is, how do you have a laptop full of potential bribery and graft and the FBI doesn't care? How do you have private servers with top secret intel on them outside of the U.S. government and Democrats and media don't care? How is this possible? Do you think that any other country in the world would allow a foreign minister or their version of a secretary of state to have private servers? You couldn't even do that at Microsoft. You think Bill Gates would allow that? You couldn't do that at Apple. You couldn't even do that at Target. You think you could go to Apple Computer or Microsoft and then just say, you know what, I'm just going to have my own servers. Sorry, I'm just going to email. You're not going to find out what I'm doing. They would be afraid that you're sending information to other rivals within the tech industry. That's obvious.
Senator Ossoff, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, it seems to me that some people...
The only person who's just as amusing as Louis Gohmert is John Kennedy. It's so great. It's so great.
Should not have power. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how experienced they are. They just don't have enough maturity or morality or ethics to exercise power. And I am talking, of course, about your predecessor. You have been a significant improvement. Unlike my experience with you, and what I've observed is that unlike your predecessor, you're not egomaniacal, and you're not egocentric, and you're not a self-aggrandizer. You don't run around like your predecessor going, look at me, look at me. You don't leak to the press like the Titanic. And I know that's a low bar, but I appreciate it. You talk a lot about 38,000 women and men in the FBI, the vast majority of whom do an extraordinary job, and I agree with that. Most of those women and men that you're talking about are in your field offices. I'm not saying there aren't some in the Washington office. But the problems we've had with the FBI over the past decade, you've alluded to them, have come primarily out of the Washington office. I listened carefully to your recitation of your efforts to clean that up. But I think most fair-minded Americans still wonder if there has been real accountability in all cases. And that's the spirit in which I'm going to ask you these questions. Who made the decision at the FBI to raid Mar-a-Lago for those documents?
Well, I'm not sure there's a specific person that made the decision. It was the investigative team that was on that investigation, working with the prosecutors on the case.
I can't imagine there wasn't somebody that wanted who made the ultimate decision. I can't believe that they voted on it, like in one of the teams that were working with the National Archives, which is a government library. The National Archives cited the Presidential Records Act. The Presidential Records Act doesn't have an enforcement mechanism, has never been used to acquire classified data from any former president. You had Clinton, Bush, President Obama, with classified data that they should have either given or they took with them. And nobody's dwellings were raided. They went after Trump, and then the agents or somebody allegedly put these folders that said classified, top secret, that were not there. Somebody literally, allegedly tampered with evidence. So that photo you saw where it said top secret, Trump had top secret. Those folders, with the red top secret on them, Trump never had those. They were placed there for the photo. That's illegal also.
Why didn't you just do a consent to search and avoid all the drama?
Well,
but whoever made the decision.
Yeah. Let me try it this way, because obviously we are talking now about not just an ongoing investigation. That's not just an ongoing investigation that's being led by a special counsel, but an ongoing investigation being led by a special counsel that's in front of a court with likely very strong views about what it is I can say publicly.
So there are so many layers to the bureaucracy, he just can't say he can't answer the question. So the bureaucracy now is run by Kash Patel and John Ratcliffe and people like Trump who want to get to the truth. So Democrats utilized government bureaucracy and the classification process to try to ruin Trump. But now Trump can utilize that to not only exonerate himself, but indict, prosecute, and imprison the people who utilized government bureaucracy, the classification process, and other elements of lawfare against him. If the United States government is funded by the U.S. taxpayer. The United States government is not some private business that you can just go ahead and, it's your business. It's not like the officials that went after Trump under false pretenses and for purely overtly partisan motives, all of their communication is there. Everything that they classified to hide from, the Inspector General, for example, it's still there. It's not going to take more than 5, 6, 7 months, if that, for all the information to come out from Kash Patel and Radcliffe and others.
Which gets at some of your gracious comments about public commentary about cases. But I think in that particular instance, if you look.
Andrea, thank you. Hello, Andrea.
At the affidavit in support of the search warrant, and more importantly, the pleadings that were filed by the prosecutors in the case, they lay out in a very detailed way all the efforts that were made to ensure compliance short of proceeding to a search, as well as now has been charged, actual obstruction of justice. And so, in my experience, again, speaking more generally now, both as a line prosecutor and now as FBI director, when it comes to obtaining classified information, retrieving it, we typically pursue the least intrusive means possible. But if those don't work, and certainly if there's obstruction of justice, which in this case, as found by a probable cause standard by the judge, then it's pretty typical to resort to a search.
There was no obstruction of justice. Trump had every right to legally oppose anything that he felt was intrusive, just like every other president has done that without getting raided. But let's continue.
Maybe you can respond in writing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, welcome. As you know, I am deeply concerned about the conduct of both the Department of Justice and the FBI, particularly in the last 3 years during the Biden administration. I think the Department of Justice has been profoundly politicized under Attorney General Merrick Garland, and I think the FBI has as well. And unfortunately, I think you've been unwilling to stand up to senior career officials in the FBI who's allowed the FBI to be politicized. I'll tell you, I regularly speak with FBI agents across the country who are unhappy about the integrity of the institution being weakened because DOJ is being treated as a political weapon. I want to talk in particular about the investigation into multiple allegations of corruption concerning Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Because the Department of Justice has, I think, from the outset, tried at every step to stop investigation into corruption from Joe Biden. As you're aware, a WhatsApp text message was sent to Henry Zhao, a senior Chinese communist, from Hunter Biden that reads as follows. I'm sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand. And now means tonight. And Z, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows, and my ability to hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father.
How on earth is that not an example of bribery or graft? Can somebody explain? I see, like, the average morally superior liberal Democrat can't even fathom that you have Hunter trying to pressure an official in a country that is can be viewed to be an economic or even political adversary in many ways. I mean, this is just one. I mean, there's a laptop full. And then Democrats, of course, and media, of course, always deflect, and they always try to misdirect or, they have this sleight of hand, like this magic trick. They say, well, it's about his photos. Why are you so obsessed with photos? It's like, well, it's nothing to do with the deviant photos in the laptop. If you want that, you can just go to Anthony Weiner's laptop or whatever, Bill Clinton's or whatever. Nobody cares about the photos. They care about the possible bribery and graft. That's the issue. And they can't find anything. Could you imagine? I mean, 20 plus years ago, Bush Republicans were the center of corruption. Okay? See, I'm not a political partisan. I'm just an American citizen. Okay? Used to be a lifelong Democrat. But I've supported Trump for 7 years now. Because he's the anti-war choice, and he presided over record low poverty and record highs in household median income. He's a great president. That's why he won the popular vote. Everything I've ever said about Trump was vindicated on November 5th of this month, of last month. Okay? But the point is, if Trump had a laptop, he'd already be in prison. If Hunter's laptop was really Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr.'s laptop, and you had obvious bribery and graft within this message right here, he'd already be in prison.
Now, Democrats and those in the media trying to defend the White House repeatedly say there is no direct evidence of Joe Biden's involvement in his son's corruption. Well, this is a text that is direct evidence that is stating that it is his father that is going to retaliate. Now, an IRS whistleblower, Gary Shapley, testified before the House of Representatives that the natural step he wanted to follow was to determine whether Joe Biden was in fact sitting next to his father when this threat was made to extort millions of dollars from a Chinese communist. And what the IRS whistleblower testified is that when he tried to find out whether Joe Biden was sitting next to Hunter, that the DOJ blocked getting the GPS data on Joe Biden's phone. Did the FBI try to ascertain where Hunter Biden was and where Joe Biden was when this text was sent?
Well, I think the questions you're asking go to the ongoing investigation being led by Special Counsel Weiss, and so I'm not going to be.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard ongoing investigation. There's numerous levels of bureaucracy. It's the same thing over and over again. Okay? And so he's leaving. He was marginally better than James Comey. Actually, probably a lot better than James Comey, but it was still the same Federal Bureau of Investigation. They did not like Trump. Almost certainly the top officials, maybe Director Wray was completely apolitical, but all his top officials very likely despised Trump. Now you have Kash Patel, who will fire a whole bunch of people almost certainly, just like Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. And there will be a lot of people fired, a lot of people indicted, a lot of classified documents that aren't national security declassified. There will be special counsels. There will be a lot of trials, and the Democrats will completely melt down. This is the issue, ladies and gentlemen. The Democratic Party, the average Democrat, doesn't care about any of this. So all of the people will start GoFundMes and all that stuff. Nobody's going to care. It's very different when the average supporter of Trump saw what was taking place with Donald Trump, saying, wait a second, that's not fair. The average Democrat knows that government was leveled against Trump. They know what's coming, and they almost subliminally, they understand that if they were in Trump's position, they'd do the same thing anyway. Hit subscribe to this channel. Paul Bartlett, everyone here, thank you so very, very, very much. God bless you all.